My name is Woody Harrelson. I'm 73 years old, and I've been sitting in the same recliner for 3 hours listening to my family discuss my future like I wasn't in the room. Technically, I'm in the kitchen, separated from the living room by nothing but an open archway and 60 years of accumulated bitterness I've never learned to swallow. My hearing aid is turned up to full volume, and I can hear every word. "He's really declining," my daughter Sarah says. She's been saying this for 2 years, though I can still walk, still cook, still remember the names of everyone in this house. Maybe it's time we looked into assisted living, the memory place on Riverside. Her husband Mark makes that sound he always makes, a kind of affirming grunt that means he agrees but doesn't want to be the one who suggested it. They've been married 31 years, and I've never heard him say anything of actual substance about anything that mattered. My son-in-law works in insurance. He evaluates risk for a living. I suppose that's what I am now, a risk. My grandson Tommy says nothing. He's scrolling through his phone, his foot bouncing the way it does when he's uncomfortable. He's 16, tall like my husband was, though I don't think he knows that. I don't think he knows much about his great-grandfather at all, except that I'm the old man who sometimes watches him but mostly just sits here. Sarah lowers her voice. "He burned something on the stove last week. Did you know that? I found it black on the bottom of my good pot. He just left it there like he didn't even notice." What she doesn't say is that I left it there because I was sitting on the back porch thinking about the morning I found her crying in the garage when she was 12 years old. And by the time I came back inside, the moment felt too fragile to interrupt with the practicalities of a pot. "His insurance will cover some of it," Mark says. "This is what he cares about, the financial geometry of my decline." I'm wearing a green button-up shirt I bought in 1998. The collar is starting to fray at the edges. I bought it in Portland during the year everything changed, the year I became someone my family doesn't talk about except when they think I can't hear. I've kept the shirt because it's one of the few things I own that remembers when I was a different person, someone real. My wife Margaret, they call her Meg, though I've never called her anything but Margaret, died in 2009, 14 years ago now. For a while after, I used to pretend I was still cooking for 2. I'd make enough roasted vegetables for 6 people and eat them for a week. Sarah used to come check on me, and she'd find these plates of food in the refrigerator, carefully stored in glass containers I'd bought for us when we were still learning to save money. She'd look at them and then look at me, and I'd see something in her face that I've spent the last 14 years trying not to identify. Pity maybe, or relief. The thing about getting old that nobody tells you is how much of it is about being forgotten. Not all at once, that would be a mercy, but in small pieces, in conversations that happen 5 feet away from you, in the assumption that your hearing is shot and your mind is softer than it is, in the way your family talks about your death like you're already not there to hear it. I had a job once. I was a social worker, a career I chose because I was deeply, almost evangelically interested in fixing people's lives. I believed I could matter in the way a single kind word matters, a hand on a shoulder, a moment where someone feels seen. That belief lasted about 9 years before I realized I was trying to fix people who didn't want fixing, and worse, people who were never actually broken. They were just surviving like everyone else. I worked for the county. I made decent money. I had 17 years of stability. It ended the way these things end, quietly in a conference room with a letter that used the word restructuring. But that's not really where the story begins. The real beginning was 3 weeks ago, on a Tuesday, when Sarah brought her friend Carol over to help organize my medications into one of those terrible plastic organizers with the days of the week printed across the top. Carol was a woman I'd met maybe 5 times before, a nurse from Sarah's office who had the kind of easy kindness that makes you immediately suspicious of her motives. She was wearing mint green scrubs with cats on them, and she moved through the kitchen like she'd lived here, like she wasn't a stranger imposing order on my carefully disordered life. I watched her from my chair, I was careful not to seem like I was watching. Sarah was telling her about a fight they'd had years ago, some work conflict that had been resolved years ago, and Carol was laughing in that way people do when they're trying to show you they're the kind of person who can laugh at themselves. It was fake, but it was a nice kind of fake. Intentional. While Sarah talked, Carol began opening my cabinet, the one where I keep the glasses. Without asking, she took one down and filled it with water from the tap. She walked over to me, this old man sitting in a recliner, and she handed me the water. "You should drink more," she said. It wasn't an instruction, it was just a fact stated gently. I drank the water. She went back to organizing my pills, and I didn't think much about it. It was one moment. The kind of small thing that people do for each other 1,000 times a day without significance. Oxygen in a conversation, wallpaper in a house. But I remembered it. I was still remembering it when the cracks began to show. They started about 2 weeks later. Sarah stopped coming by on Wednesdays. She changed it to Thursdays, but then she changed it again, and soon she was only coming when she had something specific to do, to take me to a doctor's appointment, to buy groceries, to handle whatever practical maintenance I required. The texture of our relationship changed. It became transactional. Mark started coming with her more often. He'd sit in the kitchen and make phone calls. His voice would drop when he heard me moving around, and he'd glance back at me the way you glance at a stray dog in a parking lot, with a mixture of discomfort and concern that's mostly concern about your own discomfort. Tommy stopped visiting altogether. I told myself this was fine, normal, everyone's busy, people have their own lives. But I'm old enough to know when you're being replaced, piece by piece, by a professional. I'm old enough to recognize it because I did it myself once to 3 different clients over the span of 5 years. I'm old enough to know that it means they've already made a decision. They're just waiting for the right moment to tell you. That moment came on a Thursday in March. Sarah brought papers. She spread them across the kitchen table like a real estate agent selling a house. Riverside Assisted Living. Prices printed in a little color-coded box. 3 levels of care depending on your condition. Basic, intermediate, premium. I was, according to some assessment I'd never been given, a candidate for basic with a possible transition to intermediate. "It's actually really nice," Sarah said. She was using her explaining voice, the one she used when she was telling me facts about things I should accept. "They have activities. There's a movie night on Thursdays." "I watch movies here," I said. "Yes, but you could do it with people. The activity director is wonderful. Her name is Janet. She's won awards." I didn't know what awards an activity director could win, and I didn't ask. I was too busy noticing that Mark wasn't sitting next to her. He was standing near the kitchen counter, angled away from the table like he'd agreed to be here, but didn't want to be directly accountable to my reaction. "How much of my savings will this use?" I asked. Sarah's face did that thing it does when she's been rehearsing her answer. "With your Social Security and pension, it should be manageable for about 3 years. After that, we'll need to look at." 3 years, I said. "So the assumption is I'll be dead in 3 years." "Dad, that's not." "That's what the math says, Sarah. 3 years of savings plus Social Security equals I'll be dead. Or I'll be out of money and you'll have to figure out what to do with me then." She didn't argue. That was the worst part. She didn't argue. "Your health is declining," she said finally. The same thing she'd been saying for 2 years. The same narrative repeated until it became true. I thought about the pot I'd burned. I thought about how I'd been absent that moment, lost somewhere in my own mind, and how a burning pot was apparently evidence of systemic deterioration. I thought about how easy it is to make an old person seem incompetent, how little it takes. "I'm fine," I said. "Dad, you're not." "I'm fine," I said again, not louder, just final. Mark cleared his throat. He made that phone call sound with his throat even though he wasn't on a phone. It's something he does when he's about to take control of a conversation. "Woody," he said. My name sounded strange in his mouth. He doesn't use it often. "We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to help you. There's a difference." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I understood in that moment that he believed what he was saying. He actually believed that boxing me into a facility, surrounded by people my age who are also in decline, managed by professionals trained to smile through the sadness of it all, was helping. He believed it because that's what people do when they've decided your life is a problem to be solved rather than a life to be lived. Sarah left the papers on the table. She didn't push. Pushing wasn't necessary. The decision had already been made. I was just being given the courtesy of appearing to consent to it. After they left, I sat with the papers for a long time. I read the testimonials from families. I looked at pictures of sunny common areas where old people smiled at the camera like they were at Disneyland. I read the 3-star review from someone who said, "Dad seems content, which was our main goal." Content, not happy, not thriving, content. Like a cow in a field, happy enough as long as nothing changes. That's when I found out the real thing. It was while I was throwing the papers away that I knocked over the garbage can, and out fell something that had been under the sink, a folder, marked in Sarah's handwriting. Dad's stuff. Inside were documents, medical records dating back 6 months. A neuropsych evaluation I'd never been given, just results, written in the passive voice of professional terminology. Patient demonstrates decline in short-term recall, reduced executive function, indicators consistent with early-stage cognitive impairment. There were notes, observations logged on dates when Sarah claimed to be coming over for casual visits, burned pot on stove, didn't notice, asked me the same question 3 times, left the refrigerator open for extended period. Someone had been documenting my decline like I was a client, not a daughter's father. The last document was an email chain, printed out and filed away. From Sarah to Mark. From Mark to an elder law attorney. From the attorney back to both of them, discussing the best way to establish power of attorney, the timeline for moving me, the process for managing my finances if the situation became more urgent. The situation, that's what they called my life. There was also a photograph printed from an email. It was me, asleep in this recliner, my mouth open, my head thrown back at an angle that's probably not good for my neck. Someone had taken it while I was sleeping. Someone who loved me had taken a photograph of me at my most vulnerable and sent it to her husband with a subject line that said, "This is what I'm talking about." I sat on the kitchen floor with that photograph in my hand and felt something in my chest break the way a frozen lake breaks in spring. Not all at once, but in pieces, the cracks spreading and spreading until it's all just collapsing into dark water. I stopped eating, not deliberately exactly. I just stopped being hungry. I'd wake up and think about breakfast, and the idea of cooking for myself would feel like too much work. I started drinking water because Carol said I should, and it required no cooking. I sat in the recliner and watched the light move across the floor, watching my own shadow grow thinner. Sarah noticed and texted me, "Are you okay?" As if she cared, as if she wasn't already deciding what to do with my body. I didn't respond. 2 weeks passed like that, March turning into April. The trees outside the window began to bloom, and I watched them the way you watch someone you're saying goodbye to, memorizing details you'll need later. It was Carol who found me, I think. Or rather, it was Carol who came over and realized something was actually wrong. Not wrong in the way Sarah had documented it, functionally declining, but wrong in the way that matters. Actually hurt. She came by because Sarah had asked her to check on me. Even in her kindness, Carol was being used as a tool. But she didn't know that, or maybe she knew and came anyway because that's what actual kindness is. Not self-aware, not strategic, just showing up. She found me in the recliner at 4 in the afternoon, still in yesterday's clothes, and instead of suggesting I shower or eat or do something functional, she sat down on the edge of the chair and asked me what was wrong. I almost didn't tell her. I almost protected Sarah, who is my daughter and whom I've been protecting since she was born. Since I learned that parenting is just a long exercise in keeping your child's heartbreak as far away from them as possible, but I was too tired to lie. I showed her the papers, the medical records I'd never authorized, the photograph taken while I slept, the emails discussing my future like I wasn't a future at all, just a problem within timeline. Carol read them in silence. When she finished, she folded them back up and set them on the side table. "Your daughter loves you," she said. "I'm sure of that." "That doesn't matter," I said. "Love doesn't stop you from doing what you've decided to do. It just makes you feel better about doing it." "Maybe," Carol said, "but here's what I know. I'm a nurse. I see families do this all the time. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes they're right. But I've never seen a family documentation this thorough, this careful, unless they were trying to make sure they had legitimate reasons. Because on some level, even when they're doing something they think is necessary, they know it might be wrong." I looked at her. She was sitting in my living room in her cat scrubs, holding my private medical information, and saying something that was both comforting and not comforting at all. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean the fact that she kept records, documented observations, forwarded them to a lawyer. That's not something people do casually. That's something people do because they're scared they're making a mistake." I thought about this. I thought about Sarah, who's had anxiety her whole life, who checks things twice and 3 times and 4 times, who worries about getting things right, who's been worrying about me for 2 years in the way that eventually becomes controlling, becomes planning, becomes deciding without asking. She was scared. That much had been evident, but fear doesn't make something okay. Fear is just the emotion that precedes the bad decision. "What do you suggest I do?" I asked Carol. "Tell her," Carol said. "Tell her you know, not angry, not accusatory, just tell her you know." After Carol left, I sat with that advice. I made tea. I showered. I began, in small ways, to take care of myself again. It's remarkable what a purpose will do, even a purpose made of confrontation, even a purpose made of finally saying the things you've been afraid to say. I called Sarah and asked her to come over. Not through text. I called. I used the phone, which I don't usually do, which is maybe evidence of genuine decline or maybe just evidence of someone who's gotten used to being ignored. She came on a Saturday afternoon, Mark in tow like always. Tommy wasn't with them. He's been kept away from me now, I think, though not explicitly, just in the architecture of their scheduling. I made coffee. I sat them down in the kitchen and I told them I knew. "Knew what?" Sarah asked, but her voice was already doing that thing it does when it's about to make an excuse. "I know about the medical records, the photography, the attorney. I know you've been documenting me." Mark shifted in his chair. He was already calculating. I could see it happen in real time. Calculating liability, calculating how to respond, calculating how to regain control of the narrative. "That was for your own good," he said. "Was it?" I asked. "Or was it because you've decided I'm a problem, and you needed documentation that would make that decision feel legitimate?" Sarah's face crumpled. This is her tells. When she's about to cry, her whole face goes soft and contradictory, like a child's. "We're trying to help," she said. "You burned the pot, you left the fridge open, you're not taking care of yourself." "I'm 73, I said. "I'm allowed to burn pots, I'm allowed to get distracted, I'm allowed to not be perfect." "This isn't about perfection," Sarah said. "This is about—" And then she stopped. She actually stopped mid-sentence, and I saw her recognize something about what she'd been about to say. Something about how this really was about wanting me to be what she needed me to be, not what I actually was. I'm afraid, she said finally. I'm afraid you're dying. I'm afraid you're going to die out here alone, and it's going to be my fault. This is what I should have pushed harder to understand. Not the decision to move me, not the medical records, but this fear. This was the real thing, and I'd been so hurt by the implementation that I'd missed the motivation. I'm not alone, I said quietly. And I'm not dying, not yet, I'm just old. That's what everyone thinks, Sarah said, right up until they do. Mark put his hand on her shoulder, a gesture of support that also feels like control, like he's managing her emotion. We should take some time, Mark said. Maybe Woody should think about what he really wants. This is the moment I should have done something different. I should have stood my ground. I should have been angry or righteous or determined. Instead, I just felt tired. They left the papers on the table again, as if leaving them multiple times would eventually make me sign them. I didn't sign them. Instead, I did something small and unlikely. I called Carol. I asked her if she could help me find my own place, not an assisted living facility, but something smaller, somewhere I could actually live, not somewhere I could be managed. She said she could, and she did. Within a month, I'd found an apartment in a mixed-income community that's neither a desperate place for poor people nor a resort for the wealthy, just a place where people live their lives. Carol helped me move. Sarah noticed I was moving and tried to stop it, but legally there was nothing she could do. I'm still competent, still able to make my own decisions. I had to remind her of this, which was painful in a way I didn't expect. The twist, the thing that changed how I understood everything, came about 4 months after I'd moved. Tommy showed up at my apartment. Just showed up one Saturday morning with coffee and a backpack like he was moving in. I didn't know where you were, he said. I asked around, Carol told me. I hadn't seen him in almost 5 months. He'd grown taller. He looked like someone I used to know but couldn't place. Your mom doesn't know you're here, I asked. I don't care, he said, which was probably a lie but maybe wasn't. 16-year-olds are hard to read. He sat at my kitchen table and I made him breakfast. Real breakfast, eggs and toast, the things that require actual cooking. He ate like he was starving, and maybe he was. Maybe he'd been starving in other ways too. They told me you were sick, he said. They told me you were losing your mind. Did you believe them? I asked. No, he said. I think they were lying, or I think they believed it, but not for the reason they said. He was a smart kid. Smarter, probably, than anyone had given him credit for. They were scared, I told him. People do things when they're scared. Yeah, he said, but that doesn't make it okay. He came back several more times over the summer. He told me about school, about his friends, about the pressure of existing as a teenager in a family that was falling apart for reasons nobody was talking about. He told me his parents had been fighting more since I moved out. He told me his mom cried a lot. He told me his dad kept saying everything was better now, everything was simpler. Easier, he meant, not better, easier. Do you think you made the right choice? Tommy asked me once. I think I made a choice, I said. I'm not sure anymore if right and wrong are the relevant categories. I started seeing Carol more during this time. We had coffee. We talked. She never made it romantic or complicated. She just showed up. She asked how I was. She listened to the answer. About 8 months after I moved, Sarah called me. Not texted, called. I'm sorry, she said, just like that. No preamble, no explanation. I didn't say anything. I was too surprised. I was wrong, she continued. I was so afraid of losing you that I started losing you before you left. I was trying to control what was happening to you, and I just made everything worse. Yes, I said, you did. I read something about older people, she said, in a magazine. It said that one of the cruelest things we do is take autonomy away in the name of safety, and I realized that's what I was doing. It's okay, I said, because it seemed like something to say. It wasn't really okay. It might never be fully okay, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that she recognized it at all. We started having coffee together. Just coffee. No Mark, no discussions about my health, no hidden agendas. Just a daughter and a father trying to rebuild something after it had broken. Tommy started coming around more. Sarah brought him once, and it was awkward in the way that matters, a kind of honesty that only exists in discomfort. Slowly, very slowly, we became something again, not what we were, something new. The real ending is quieter than these things usually are. I'm still in my apartment. I still cook sometimes, and I still burn things occasionally. The difference is, now it doesn't feel like evidence of decay. It just feels like living. Carol comes over sometimes. We don't kiss or do anything dramatic. Sometimes we just sit on the couch reading different books, and it feels like enough. She never gave me water to remind me that I needed taking care of. She gave me water because I was thirsty, and that's the only thing that matters. That intention. That small acknowledgement that I'm still here, still a person, still deserving of presence. The thing I understand now, looking back at everything, the documentation, the conversations I wasn't supposed to hear, the medical records, the photographs, is that Sarah was trying to love me. She was trying to protect me from the thing she was most afraid of, me leaving her, or her leaving me, or both of those things happening at the same time and nobody being able to do anything about it. But you can't protect someone from being mortal. You can't protect them from decay. You can only be present in it. You can only remember that the person in front of you is still the person you loved, even when they're changing, even when they're becoming someone new. I still have that green shirt from 1998. I wear it sometimes, and I remember the person I was when I bought it. She's gone now, though not entirely. She's in the way I make tea. She's in the stories I tell Tommy. She's in the fact that I had the courage to walk away from my own daughter when walking away was the kindest thing I could do. I never did move into that assisted living facility. Nobody forced me. The decision became mine again, and having options changes everything. It turns what was being done to you into something you're choosing, even if the choice is just to maintain your own ground. Last month, Sarah and I had lunch, and Tommy came with us. We sat outside because it was spring again, and the trees were blooming the way they do every year, like they don't remember that they've done this before. Tommy asked me about my work years ago and why I stopped. I realized I couldn't fix people, I said. That was a hard thing to learn. But you fixed us, Tommy said. No, I said. You fixed yourselves. I just stayed long enough to remember that you were trying. That's all any of us are doing, I think. Trying. Staying. Remembering that the person in front of us is still a person, still deserving of the kindness of believing they could be better, or at least different, or at least still here. I'm still here. That's what I want them to know. I'm still here, and I'm still listening, and I'm still remembering everything.